forces that create trust, cohesion, empathy, and brotherhood between nations. From the very beginning of the biblical narrative, the Israelites were set apart as God's chosen people, while the attitude they were to have toward all other tribes and nations ranges from avoidance to abhorrence. The Bible is not written so as to bring nations, nationalities, and ethnic groups together. Quite the contrary. From the conflicts between the Israelites and other ethnic groups onward, the story never changed. The Amorites, the Jebusites, the Hivites, the Philistines, and many others were always cast in the role of the bad guys, while the Israelites were God's chosen people. If that's not calculated to create a feeling of national superiority, nothing is. Now one can see why Christians who claim to have stepped into the Israelites' shoes consider themselves superior to all others. We'd like to conclude today by reading a couple of letters we received from people who jettisoned their religious indoctrination. The first is from a former Mormon and says, "I wish to include my voice amidst those who applaud your efforts toward demolishing the fallacies that have bedeviled our lives for too many generations. I was born into a Mormon family, and I live on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. So I am sure that you can imagine the difficulty I have experienced since I made a decision some 30 or 40 years ago to abandon efforts to believe in claims to ultimate knowledge based on nothing more substantial than the utterings of self-appointed prophets proclaiming, 'Thus saith the Lord.' I know from experience that reasoning with those who reason from a totally unreasonable premise is a frustrating proposition. I love life as much as anybody, but I do not believe that I express that love by embracing systems that smack of deception and subterfuge. I recognize your courage in taking on the champions of non-thought, and I wish you were nearer our area so that I could attend some of your sessions. Keep up the good work." Unquote. Our second letter is from a former fundamentalist who was very active in his church and was written to the former fundamentalist minister Farrell Till, who, as I've mentioned several times, has a periodical very similar to ours entitled The Skeptical Review. The writer says, and of course he's writing this to Farrell, "I want you to know that I appreciate what you're doing. Yours are a noble effort. At one time, my wife and I were very involved with the Fundamentalist Bible Church. I was on the board of elders and chairman of the Christian Education Committee. My wife taught Sunday school. Our kids went to a Christian school. We tithed and then some. We ate up," and he has that in big quotes, "we ate up Christianity with a passion. One day I decided to look into the foundation of Christianity. What got me started was that I read the Bible enough to begin to notice significant problems. I did a lot of reading, and now I have an extensive library of critical material. I'm happy to say that I've been a born-again atheist for about 15 years. I enjoy debunking Christianity and feel that those of us in the know have a responsibility to do so. To remain silent about something this important and not to tell what you know is both cowardly and uncharitable." Unquote. In response to this letter, Farrell said, quote, "I don't want to sound like a broken record, but here we have another former Christian testifying to the happiness he found by rejecting his fundamentalist beliefs. We have yet to hear from one former fundamentalist who says, skepticism has made my life miserable. I was so much happier when I was a Christian fundamentalist. Nevertheless, this is Sparrow speaking, nevertheless, those who worship the Bible continue to insist that skeptics have doomed themselves to lives of gloom and despair. How utterly false. That completes our presentation. And please join us later for the 58th edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, when we'll continue showing why the Bible is nothing more than the flawed composition of some fallible human beings. Thank you for listening.